Hello, and welcome back to Smart Martial Arts. I'm lazy. Let's do it this way. Look at that. After 4 months of being on YouTube, I finally made an intro. I think I would call that progress. We're going places on YouTube here at Smart Martial Arts. But anyway, in this video, I'm going to be talking about what you should focus on going through the ranks. And I'm not going to talk about every belt in general because I'll be honest, I don't really know that. But we're going to be talking about kind of the tiers of them, meaning beginner, intermediate, advanced, and then black belts. And then what I barely know about the black belts, what you should focus on those degrees. But starting right into it, the beginner ranks, which I would call, in my school, what we call them, are white, yellow, and orange. With those ranks, you should really focus on getting a very good foundation. And foundation meaning literal as well. So foundation of just the basic stuff, but also the foundation of footwork. Because later on down the road, footwork is a huge thing. Once you get forms, once you start sparring, footwork is a massive thing. More so in sparring because footwork in sparring can make or break you. So other than just the actual, your footwork by foundation, what I mean is just learn everything you can and focus on getting all of the basic stuff down. Where your stances are, where you're supposed to look during your forms, how something is supposed to be. And then kind of, once you start doing that, transition into understanding what it is you're doing. Now, going into the intermediate ranks, which are purple, blue, and green, you should start to really, this is the kind of, the finding yourself phase, where you should start to improve everything for you. I guess that's a terrible way to put it. A better way to put it is to find out ways that work for you. To start doing your forms the way that you want to do your forms. Make them your own. Tell your own story. That's what a form is. A form is just a story that you tell with no actual speaking other than a ki here or there. And then, So, now going to the intermediate ranks. Next, the intermediate ranks, which are purple, blue, and green. This phase, going into the intermediate phase now, which is blue, Next, going into the purple, are we fucking serious? And next we have the intermediate phase, which is purple, blue, and green belt. This phase I would also call the finding yourself phase. This is where you want to start really refining everything to your personal way of doing it. Finding out the ways that you have to and can do forms. Making them your own story instead of a story that your instructor has showed you. They still have to be the same. You can't change something, but the way you tell it can be different. When someone tells a story, if you gave someone the same book to read, they would read it differently. Their accents, their inflections would be all wrong and all different. Not all wrong, but all different. It's the same way with a form. A form is a story. So tell it the way that you want to tell it. Along with that, this is where we start introducing sparring, because we have to spar in this class. So then you start to focus on that, the basics for that, the footwork, where your hand should be, the guard, where your strikes can go, how to start reading people. But sparring is a very complicated and lengthy thing, and it's going to continue going. And the last major thing I guess you should start working on is finding out your way to teach. Because even though maybe if you don't want to necessarily become a teacher or an instructor, at this point you should start being able to. Because after this, so I say green belt, you should start focusing on this. Because after this, you're going into the advanced rank, which is a very high rank in comparison. Not a lot of people are at this. Not a lot of people get to this. And at this point, you can start throwing in things. Because the way that I teach is I try to make, let's say they're a purple belt. I will try to make them a better purple belt than I was. So at this point, green belt and kind of the ending of blue, start to really understand why. And this is where that why part comes in, because you want to start being able to maybe not teach, but help guide through them. Help to be able to be there, maybe be like an assistant helper, where if someone is having trouble with something, being able to help them along with that. The advanced phase is a weird one, because in the way that my style is set up, there's 2 degrees of brown belt, and then you have your recommended black belt, which is kind of like you're ready for it, and you're supposed to go everything else. But we'll get to that. So the brown belts, you should start working on. I guess this is kind of just be a sponge at this point. Is learn everything you can. Make sure that you have everything that you need to have. I don't know if there's any, I guess there's no requirements for any of these, but the brown belts are kind of a weird, oddly high. Because at this point, you get a new concept in my style. You start to learn the nunchuck, which is the first weapon style, or I guess the first weapon system, technically. I don't know, that's more of a gun thing, but weapon system. Fuck it, let's just say it. And that's a whole different ballgame, because the way that a weapon was described to me is an extension of yourself. So you should start to understand, and this is kind of where you make, from the intermediate phase, where you start making forms of your own story. You start to become really comfortable with being able to do hand forms, empty-handed forms. Because if you don't know how yourself works and how you can control yourself, then you're not going to be able to control a weapon, which is kind of a weird thing. A nunchuck is very weird when you first pick it up. It does kind of the opposite thing, if you think about it, and it's delayed. It's weird. So you start to learn that, and then you start to learn sparring. This is when you should start learning and focusing a lot more on sparring and a more practical application. This is when this starts to really hit you. And then, of course, the same thing. You still want to be refining your stuff. And the recommended black belt, this is when it gets kind of tricky, because you don't learn I don't think you learn any new forms, other than maybe one more form. But this is when you start to just crack down, and this is where you need to ask every question you can and get your shit together. Because next is black belt, and my personal opinion of black belt is you don't just get that. That should be a very, very difficult and rare thing to get, because it's what everyone wants. You need to earn that, and you need to feel like you earned it. There's nothing worse than having a belt that you feel like you didn't deserve, especially if however long you have to wait. It's terrible. And then the last part of the recommended black belt, or the last belt in your style, should be the understanding of what exactly it is you're doing in your forms, especially. Because after this, now we get into the black belt phase, where you finally made it. Your goal of becoming a black belt, you've made it after we have an 8-hour-long test. It's miserable, but it's so much fun. And after you have that belt wrapped around you, where do you go from there? This is where the journey really starts. Because now you have the freedom. You have the basics of everything dug into your head. You have everything well. You've started sparring. You started to refine sparring. You started to really refine your forms, understand how everything you make it you. You've started to understand weapons and have that new thing, which is weird. Now you get to black belt, and now you start getting new ways of doing everything differently. Where maybe at the beginning you start to learn blocks and getting out of the way, but now you're learning trapping or going in. It's super weird. So now that you need everything, because you're going to do everything wrong now. So first degree, I'm only going to go to third, because I don't really know anything really past that, because obviously I'm not there on first degree, so even third's kind of like meh. But first degree, you've now started your journey. You should start to understand how you would teach everything, because a first degree black belt should start helping, should start teaching, I think. And I guess this is also a good phase to go back to kind of the intermediate, where you refine things. This is where you hyper refine. This is where you should make the habit of doing everything like you're in a tournament. Everything has to be perfect. Your forms should be the exact way they have to be. You look before you go. Your stances are low. You're making your strikes and blocks mean something. Your ki super loud and where you need it to be. If you need to be rigid, you're rigid. If you need to be loose, you're loose. Everything is now becoming perfect. Because to get from first to second degree, you should have to have the knowledge and understanding of being able to explain exactly what it is you're doing. Explain the bunkai. Explain the story. When I was doing the test that I helped out with in November, the person running the show told them, because they were all going for second degree, was at the end of this and during this, you guys should be able to explain everything that you are doing. So now, going from first to second degree, you work on that in later stages of your first degree. You start to learn where everything is going. You start to learn how this goes to this, where the strikes are going. Kind of, it's almost like you're in the intermediate phase again, but you're hyper-focused on it. Once you're in your second degree, this is where it's weird because I don't really know. I think this is kind of where I'm going to have to stop because I'm not really there yet. All the second degrees that I know, or that I've known coming into this, other than this last batch, have all been instructors. So I'm a little biased, and I don't really want to talk out of my ass because that's not really my style. I don't like to think. So I think I'm actually just gonna abruptly call it there. I hope this video wasn't too butchered. It took me a lot of takes because this is actually the first time I've kind of thought about it in such a lengthy detail. So if this is really shitty, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll put some real heavy, deep thought into this, and I'll come back to it once I get into my next rank or whatever. But I think that's going to be it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the new intro. If there's anything that you guys disagreed with, that you would add, that you would take away, something that I just completely missed, and there's probably going to be a lot of that, please let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.